climate change is expected to have a big impact on agriculture. We've seen temperatures rising at a rate of about 3 degrees per century for an annual average. We also see that the nearby ocean waters have been warming, and there's a lower frequency of snow and ice happening, especially during the spring season.
We're seeing all over elevated temperatures and elevated CO2 levels. Since we have a large coastline here, we're seeing effects of sea level rise.
There's evidence from much of the world that the heaviest rainfall events are becoming heavier. We also expect that as the climate warms, we will see a greater frequency of short-term droughts, particularly during the summer months, and a greater frequency of heat waves and less frequent cold spells. It's not simply working your way past an unfortunately timed drought or a cold spell. It's more systematic than that. It's something that we have to deal with not just once or twice, but on an ongoing basis.
If you're growing a crop like corn or like tomatoes, it's an annual crop. You can plant something different the next year. Planting a perennial crop, you can't really do that. If you're growing a crop like blueberries or grapevines that are going to be in the ground for 30, 40 years, and you have to be thinking about what is the climate going to be like as we go along, and how is it going to affect the longevity of my crop.
Extended periods of hot weather can be a problem. There's heat stress on the plants, there's heat stress on the help. We do something to help relieve that. For example, all of our apples get a sunscreen applied to them. Watermelons, peppers, all those crops are susceptible to sunburn. Certain plants have pollination issues in hot weather. Tomatoes, for example, peppers, where at certain temperatures the blossoms will fall off due to stress. Corn pollen can actually be killed. Near a sweet corn that pollinated on a particularly hot day might have some blank spots where there's no kernels on one side. Yields can go down, disease issues can crop up.
Chilling requirement refers to the number of days below a certain temperature that are required for a plant to flower and bear fruit. Let's take a crop like hazelnut, which we're trying to develop. You can't grow hazelnut south of about Virginia because they don't have a sufficient number of chilling hours for the crop to bear fruit. As the climate changes in the eastern part of the country, the degree to which we can satisfy that chilling requirement is moving up the coast. When you don't hit that chilling requirement in a year, you might not have a crop, or you might have a poor crop.
This spring, we ran into a situation where March was very warm. The fruit trees started pushing very early. We knew that it was too early from the calendar standpoint, and we were going to have a cold event during bloom or post-bloom that would negatively influence the crops. We decided to employ 2 helicopters to try to find warm air 50 to 100 feet above the crop, push that down, force the cold air out, raise the orchard temperature by 2-3 degrees. We also have a number of tractor-powered fans that we use to push cold air out of the orchard, and we used those extensively this year. And it helped. We have 100% peach crop and almost 100% apple crop.
Many pests that affect crops are dependent upon temperature. There are some that are held back by having sufficiently cold weather during the winter to reduce their population. As we see less frequent extreme cold in winter, we may see some of these pests become more abundant.
We used to have cold winters, and so a lot of particularly insects, but some diseases as well, would die off in the wintertime because it was too cold.
But we've seen invasive species the last couple of years, brown marmorated stink bugs, spotted winged Drosophila. We don't really know whether it's weather-induced or not, and really that's not our concern. These things pop up and we have to try to deal with them.
So not only do we have insects and diseases that continue over the years, but we have new insects and diseases that have come in that are devouring our fruits and vegetables.
Increase in CO2 levels has happened dramatically just within my lifetime. It's a wild card because, frankly, we don't know a lot of the effects. Some crops will apparently do better with higher CO2 levels. Some crops will do worse with it. We do know that some of the things like weed species will be healthier with higher CO2 levels, and so we can have increased weed problems. Also, there's evidence that some of the weed killers that we use, like glyphosate, doesn't work as well at higher CO2 levels.
An aspect of climate change that is not directly related to temperature, but is indirectly related, is an increase in the frequency of heavy rain events. And of course, that can often lead to flooded fields and in some places to river flooding as well.
We do a variety of things to try to minimize both of the impacts of not enough or too much rainfall at one time. So on the dry side of things, extended periods of drought, our farm is almost 100% irrigated. We use a lot of drip irrigation, we have overhead irrigation, we use wells, we use surface water irrigation.
We try and make sure the water goes where it's supposed to go, infiltrates into the ground. We use a lot of cover cropping, we use a lot of planted swale kind of things to keep the water from running off.
We have done more no-till to reduce erosion when it does rain hard, to try to keep the soil in place. Also building some infrastructure to help, such as grass waterways and diversions to carry water where it needs to be and not wash away the soil.
There are steps that farmers can take toward mitigation. Like the rest of us, I think it's incumbent on farmers to do what they can to ensure practices that don't promote climate change any more than necessary.
Farmers have a role to play in this area, similar to the role that they've been playing with soil conservation practices, farmland preservation, and future-oriented conservation practices. And I think with some advice from our land grant system, these practices toward climate change mitigation could be adopted to the suite of practices that already are employed on the farm.
We're doing rotational grazing with our dairy herd. So rotational grazing is the movement of the cattle throughout the farm in much smaller areas. We're able to manage where they're grazing and we move them incrementally. And the reason we do that is because the animals provide the impact, which is good for the soil as long as that duration is very short. Then they move on, and then there's a long period of rest before that particular section of pasture will be grazed a second time. Doing this allows the plants to regenerate, to build deeper root systems. So the more that we are able to develop these root system of these grasses, the more carbon we're able to take from the atmosphere and put back into the soil. The climate benefits of this type of low input farming would be the improvement in the soil to the point where it can withstand drought better, because organic matter increases the water holding capacity of the soil. It reduces soil erosion. It's also helping to put a balance into some of the carbon that we are emitting. So we're actually turning atmospheric carbon into organic matter and putting it into the soil.
The opportunities are there for greater practices that would be more conscious of mitigating some of the things that are going on now with greenhouse gas accumulation and carbon accumulation in the atmosphere.
Our farm distributes all of our food here locally, within our own region. Not only distribution of our products, but we like to source as many products as possible from local farms. Reducing the food miles, the food that we're able to produce here on the farm, to where it ends up on somebody's plate, that results in the end of less emissions.
I think the work that we're doing at Rutgers will help farmers deal with climate change a number of ways. One, of course, we are emphasizing climate variability in our breeding programs. So breeding for disease resistance, breeding for heat and drought tolerance. We're developing varieties that will do better under warmer conditions, for example.
And there's a high trust factor between farmers and the land grant system, specifically Rutgers Cooperative Extension and the Experiment Station. So we would look to the trusted advisors in the extension system to present the evidence, the documentation, observations from research, and shape the discussion around those findings.
What we need to be able to do is to be able to take our best climate science and deliver it to the farmers in a predictive way, to let people know this is what's coming, this is what's likely coming over the course of the next 5-10 years, this is what's coming over the course of the next 15-20 years.
We need all the good science that we can get to help us make the changes we need in our operations to minimize our risk, get food on the table for people.
We need to lean on, more than ever before, our research institutions, our land grant system, to give production agriculture farmers advice as to the pressure points that may be coming because of changes in the weather.
We need resources that are targeted specifically to climate change and adaptation, so that units such as the New Jersey Agricultural Experiment Station can take those resources and direct them properly. This is an issue that really deserves more work than it's getting right now.
We're just going to have to be resilient.